My 36 years of life, I've only ever spent about a year without a pet in a home, and I hope I never go that long again. Animals are special, and so is that bond. And it's not an owner-property bond, it's familial. I have 2 cats now that I love, and I will readily say that I like them more than most people, which is not me condemning people, it's just how special they are to me. I think we've all either experienced losing a pet, or we know someone that has. It's an incredibly common occurrence, whether it's a family dog that's been around for 2 decades or a carnival goldfish that you've had for 2 weeks. I've never really had an in-depth conversation, though, about pet loss before this week's episode. I'm really glad that I was able to do that, and I'm glad I get to share it with all of you today. One last thing, there's a poem called The Rainbow Bridge. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. I wanted to record it for the podcast, but because of copyright concerns, I didn't do that. If you've never read it, I won't spoil it. All I will say is that it is about a special place that our pets go when their lives are over. It's incredibly touching. I can't hear it or can't read it without it bringing a tear to my eye, so I hope you enjoy it if you've never read it before. As always, content warning, the show does talk about death, so please be mindful as you listen. Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal. I'm your host Andrew, and my guest this week is friend of the podcast, Nikki the Death Doula. Nikki works as a death doula helping individuals and families navigate loss, as well as hosting her own podcast, Good Grief. Nikki, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I would say it's been a while since we spoke, but that's not true. It's been a while since you've been on this show, but we spoke last week.
Yeah. I was say we just spoke last week, so
the days kind of run together. It's been busy.
They do.
Yeah, and we joked about this last week that we're recording late for both of us.
Yeah.
It's only 9:00, but yeah, this time of day my brain's kind of fried.
I know. Well, and it's that time of year where it gets dark at like 5, so by 9 it may as well be midnight.
Yeah, it's honestly around 5:00 now. At that point I've lost all sense of time. I don't know if it's 5:30 or if it's 1 a.m.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Oh, I'm in my pajamas by like 6 most nights because it's like, why? I'm not going to go anywhere. It's dark. It's crappy.
Well, I mean, in all fairness, the days I work from home, that's just the pajama day.
Oh my God, me too.
Yeah.
My husband makes fun of me.
But it's business comfortable. That's the thing.
I'll wear a nice shirt in case I have a Zoom meeting, brush my hair and put a nice shirt on, but then I'm going to wear my pajama pants all day.
I wish I could say that I do that, but it's t-shirts most of the day. Now, okay, if I have a meeting with somebody, I'm like, okay, I don't want to look like a complete slob. I keep like a pullover sweater in my office closet and just pop that bad boy on and I'm good to go.
There you go. Yeah, bare minimum, just something to cover up the spaghetti stains.
Well, the spaghetti stains and the tattoos, that way I can kind of make it look a little more professional.
Good point.
Yeah. But no, I appreciate you coming on. I don't want to fully give away a spoiler here, but I do want to say this is a grief topic I've wanted to delve into for a while, and you were the first person who I've spoken with that mentioned this as a thing they wanted to discuss. So our topic today is I'm not going to say the normal grief conversation. However, I will say that it is very much as valid, and it is one that in my own personal life I think about and it scares me. Would you please tell us who we're going to talk about today?
Yes, we're going to be talking about Yuna, who was my cat.
Yeah, and
my best friend.
I was going to say, you told me in the prep for this that it wasn't just, she wasn't just a cat. It sounds like she was a lot more than that.
Oh, she was my soulmate, 100%. My best friend. I had her pretty much my entire adult life. I feel like we grew up together and we started getting old together. Yeah. So, yeah.
How did Yuna come to your life? Was it did you adopt her? Was it a cat distribution system type of situation?
No, you know what? I always hope for the cat distribution system to work for me, and it hasn't yet. But so I had been wanting to get a cat when I was growing up. My dad didn't allow us to have pets. We could have like hamsters, but no cats, no dogs, because they were messy. And so I was just aching to be an adult so I could have a cat because I wanted a cat or a dog so bad. And like almost as soon as I had my own apartment, I'm like, I need a cat. And my college roommate at the time was working for the Board of Health, and one of the places she had to inspect was it was a woman's home who ran like a rescue shelter in her garage, basically. And she called me one day and she's like, Nikki, she has some kittens. And I'm just like, just losing my mind. And we go out there. I couldn't bring one home yet because they were only like a week old at that point, so they weren't weaned yet. And the lady was so sweet. She said somebody called her. They had found a bag of kittens tied up like a plastic bag in a dumpster.
Oh my
Somebody
God.
had thrown them out. So it's terrible, but they all lived. They all survived. Somebody found them quickly. So she was able to rescue them. And don't worry, there's a special place in hell for people that do that.
I have to hope there is.
I firmly believe, like, come on.
Yes.
But yeah, she had me come in. I got to look at the kittens, and there was 5 of them, and 4 of them were all like jumping on each other and playing and being crazy, and one was just sitting off to the side looking all sad, and I'm like, that's the one I want. I want to rescue her. I want to hold her so yeah. And then 4 or 5 weeks later, when she was old enough for me to bring her home, I brought her home.
Yeah. I love that. I love to. Okay, so I'm a cat person. I don't know how much I've said that on this podcast before, but I'll say it, loud and proud. Love dogs; they're great, but I am very much a cat person for so many reasons. But they're just so special. They're just great animals. I don't know what else to say. So somebody that would want to just throw them out like that is, like you said, there's a special place in hell.
There's just any animal. They're so defenseless. Yeah. Like, what are they? Oh my God! Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I understand, but I love stories though where there's that happy ending of they all survived and they had a chance to live and thrive.
Yeah. I always wondered about her litter mates growing up, like if they lived as long, if they had good lives, and I always thought about them.
Yeah.
I would have brought all 5 home if I could, but I was like early 20s at the time, and I could barely afford to keep myself, let alone me and one cat. So
yeah.
One was the limit.
Well, it's funny. Our oldest cat, Pork Chop, we adopted her, and it was one of those. She was found in a barn in a small town just up the road from us, and we wondered the same thing before: is what happened to her litter? How were they? Mm-hmm. But we had a similar thing whenever we picked her out. We went to the store. It was in a little, it looked like an old hardware store in a downtown. In the window, we just saw these kittens playing. It's like, this is the happiest place I've ever seen. It's a window full of kittens. And we stood outside of it, and Pork Chop, this little gray cat, just rushes through everyone else and throws her paws up on the window like to stare at us. And so we go in, and I'd already seen that this, I wanted to look at this gray cat even online before we got there. And we said we'd like to look at her. When they open the door to where the kittens are in this little window room thing, she again bolts to the front of the line, and it's like, I mean, she's picking us at this point.
Yeah.
All that to say, it's not the exact same way that they handled it, but just that when you see that cat, you're just like, all right, that's the one.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. I saw her, and I was like, nope, that's my girl. I'm gonna take that one home. And she was just so pretty. She was a blue cream tortie, so a tortoiseshell cat, but she was the muted tortie, so it was like the gray white. Kind of orange tortie color. She was so pretty.
Tell me, I know cats are very, some people would say that they're finicky. They just have their own personalities.
Oh my God.
Tell me about her.
I got stories for days of this personality on this cat. I mean, first and foremost, I tried unsuccessfully multiple times to get another cat because I always wanted to have like 2 or 3, and she would not allow it. She would not allow another cat in her house. Just period. There was one, I had to rescue a cat. Somebody's significant other was hoarding pets, basically. And he was like, I'm going to just throw all these in the shelter. And I was like, let me come get 1 or 2 from you. And I had her for about 6 months. And I lived in a 2-story apartment. And Yuna lived upstairs and Rue lived downstairs. And they never met in the middle. Like, it was just... They had their own apartment basically, and then that cat unfortunately had really bad kidney disease, and
Oh
she
no.
passed away. So we didn't have her very long. And then I had another special needs cat for a while. I had him for a good 2 or 3 years, but it was the same thing. One lived upstairs, one lived downstairs, and they hated each other. So she did not tolerate she didn't tolerate really anybody except for me. She loved the crap out of me and tolerated my husband. Towards the end, like her last like 2 or 3 years of life, she loved him just as much as she did me. She wouldn't let on. Like if I came in the room, she'd be like, "I'm not sitting with him." But they were buddies. My husband and I were newly dating, the first couple times he was alone in my apartment with her, she would like do the thing where she'd sit at the side of the room and stare at him like, "Why are you here?" And he's just like, "I'm just going to sit here. You do your thing, I'll do mine." And he would watch Doctor Who. And after a while, she started like kind of getting, she would sit closer and closer. And then after about a month, she was sitting in his lap watching Doctor Who every day. So up until she died, when she heard the Doctor Who theme song, she'd come trotting into the room, see if we were gonna watch Doctor Who.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
This is another thing. I really think that they are very intelligent animals. I mean, they can learn routines really well. They can even just that association of like, oh, that song means it's time for us to hang out. I love that. Was he a cat person before you started dating?
Oh yeah. Oh, very much so. He had cats and dogs growing up, but he really, really enjoyed cats a lot. I remember him being sad that he was living with a roommate at the time who had like the nicest cat, and his roommate moved. He was like, I mean, I miss my roommate, but I miss his cat more.
I get it. We've told our family before, if we're ever in a situation where we've got to choose, it's look, just don't get in the way of us and the cat. Well,
I'm
cats
telling
now.
you. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool though.
Yeah. No,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say she had a crazy personality. I always have to share this factoid with people. Nobody believes it, but my husband witnessed it more than once. She hated Tom Jones. I wish it was. And I mean, I tell people that, and they're like, "Okay," and my husband's like, "No, I've seen it. She loved music. If I played music, she didn't mind. Or sometimes, like, if I was singing, she'd meow with me, or like, want me to hold her while I was singing. But if we played Tom Jones, she would get straight up mad. She would yell and hiss."
I mean, everybody's a critic, I guess.
I love Tom Jones. I don't know what the problem was there, but she didn't like him.
I wonder if it just, she didn't like the tone, or maybe she thought his music was a little reductive. I mean,
she's a critic. It's possible when she was a kitten, I used to sing "What's New Pussycat" a lot to her. That might be it. I could see myself doing that, so maybe she just got a sour taste in her mouth.
Well, maybe she just liked your version better, and she thought he was butchering it.
That could be. That could be. She
I mean,
did like to
that's
hear
the
me
only thing
sing.
that makes sense. It's and that's the cool thing. So, what are some of the things that you got to do with her? Because everybody I know that has a cat, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, you have certain ways you interact with them. Our older cat, I can pick her up and hold her like a baby. She's almost 10. She's still good with that. Our younger cat, he'll walk up to my wife and he'll yell at her, put his paws up on her, and he wants her to just pick him up, give him a big stretch, and then just put him on her shoulder.
That's what our current cat does. He does hugs. He comes in, he puts his arms up, and you have to pick him up, and he'll sit on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she liked to be held by me, but nobody else. And she loved to take naps with me. But she was like, my current cat will sleep like on my face, on my chest, like wherever. She might sleep on my legs, but usually she just laid beside me. But she would put one paw on my arm, like
Just have to be touching you.
mine. Yeah.
It's her love language.
Yeah. Yeah. She just wanted to just put one paw on me, and that was it. She followed me around the house, and in her last couple of years, she had the worst arthritis in her back legs, and she could barely get up and down the stairs. And during COVID, I was working from home, so I was upstairs, and she hadn't walked upstairs probably in 2 years at that point. Because also we had that other cat for a while, and he was up here. And I was working from home one day, and almost noon, and I turned around and she was sitting behind me. I was like, oh my God, you came upstairs.
Yeah.
So I got a bed and everything for in my office because she kept wandering up to just be with me because she was like, well, Mom's home. I want to go sit with her.
That's another thing. I've heard that from COVID, what did our pets think during that whole time where all of a sudden we were home all the time.
Yeah.
And we used to joke that, Pork Chop, she probably wished we would go back to work.
I think
But I think about it now, and yeah, I mean, if we weren't in the home now, she'd probably freak out that we weren't here as much.
Yeah. I think she loved it. And like I said, she followed me around, and she could barely do the stairs, so I would try to like carry her if I could tell she was trying to follow me up and down the stairs. We weren't cool enough to get like one of those motorized chairs for her. That's a limit we didn't cross.
Look, I wouldn't have judged you if you did.
Hey, we built stairs for her to get in and out of the bed.
We've talked about that. I fault no pet owner for doing that. Anyone who's like, I want to make their life as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
No fault at all.
Yeah.
So in that case, then, with COVID, this isn't something I thought about then. So the last couple of years of her life, you got to spend more time with her. Is that true?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. She died in 2021, so basically the last year of her life, I was home a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's, I don't know if this, I guess I'm just curious. Did you think about that in the moment that you were happy you had that? Is that something you've reflected on, just, that time you got to have with her at the end?
A little, yeah. Yeah. Like I definitely was happy I got to be with her more, even in the moment. I was like, oh, I get to hang out with my cat. I'm not so busy and running it. Because you know how pets are. When you're in and out of the house a lot, you can tell they're like, oh, you just got home, you're leaving again. And I wasn't leaving. So there were times I could tell she was like, why are you here? Why don't you go somewhere that's not here?
Yeah, I need to lick myself for an hour and then take a 6-hour nap.
Yeah, seriously, and you're ruining it. Go away. But yeah, I think she also thought that maybe that meant she would get fed more, which that's how all cats are. Like, when is food?
Yeah. Basically, yeah. Ours, we can't leave food out for them. We have to do the, dry food in the morning, wet food in the evening, and, they get some treats, but they are very food motivated. So like 7:30 on the dot, they were screaming for dinner.
Oh, I broke down and bought a timed feeder because I want to sleep in on the weekends. I don't want to be getting up at 6 o'clock to feed the damn cat.
Well, we've got the time feeder for the dry food. Yeah. So in the morning, I joke with Natalie or with my wife that we've got the organic alarms. So they'll start going off.
Oh yeah.
Like right before 6, and then the thing you can hear the thing go off, and then you just hear
yeah,
and just go running towards it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's how I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask too. And this one might be a little more difficult with her passing though. Did you know that something was going on? Did it feel sudden, or did it?
Oh no.
Was it kind of a slow process?
She. Honestly, I think it was an easy process for me because she had health issues for most of her life. And I'm honestly shocked she lived as long as she did. She was about 19 when she died. And she was at death's door from the time she was about 10. So,
oh wow.
I mean, I've had to have the conversation with the vet probably a dozen times. And it made it easier but hard when the time finally did come because I had that conversation with myself, my husband, the vet so many times already. And every time I'd get to the point where all right, let's give her another few days and then we'll put her down. And then she would just perk right back up again and she was fine. Yeah. And it was so when it was time, I knew it was time, but still there was that thing in the back of my head that was she's going to perk up in a couple days. I know it. And she didn't. So she told me she was ready at that point.
Now, had you already started your journey to being a death doula at this time?
Yeah, I had let me think how this timeline worked out. Yeah, I had just started training when I had her put down.
So were you able to try to, I don't even know if you can, but were you able to try to coach yourself a bit during the process? Or
yeah, a little bit.
Can you even be there?
I know it's hard to be a doula for yourself, but I did like think about a lot of the things I was learning in training about like creating a legacy and making the perfect final moments. And when I realized it was time, I did everything I could to make home like perfect for her. And I stayed
Yeah.
home. I canceled stuff. I was, here as much as I could be and giving her, I just left food out all the time. And which was hard. She threw up a lot. She did that
Yeah.
like her last like several years. She just puked constantly. So I would leave food out, but it was kind of sometimes a bad thing 'cause she would just overeat and then get sick. But I like all the treats she wanted, all the pets she wanted. Like I slept. There were so many different times when she was sick or had had injuries that I slept downstairs on the floor just so I could be with her because I knew she couldn't get up the stairs anymore. So
You wanted to
yeah,
be
I
alone.
used a little bit of that and just like kind of created the perfect last couple days for her.
Yeah. That's That just makes me think of I've seen this thing float around on the internet before. This idea that they're with us for part of our lives, but most of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be there with her in those final days, those final moments,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to give her some level of comfort,
Mm-hmm.
it speaks to that bond. You said she was your soulmate and your best
Oh
friend. I
my
mean,
God, she was. We went through so much together. And well, like you were saying with they're there for part of our lives. We're there for most of theirs. My mom keeps telling me like she read a quote somewhere about um our pets are part of our lives, but we're their whole life.
yeah.
Like, we're all anyway. Um
No, I'm
yeah,
with you.
we
I don't care if it sounds hippy dippy.
it's true.
My
It's
pets are my
absolutely true.
family. Yeah.
I'm not shy to say that I cried harder when she died than I did when my brother died. And that's not to say that I loved her more than my brother, because that's not true at all. It's different. She was in my
Yeah.
life every single day for almost 2 decades. And like I said, she and I went through so much together. I had her before I met my first husband, you know?
Yeah.
So she went through my turbulent first marriage with me. We moved together like, I don't know, 7 times. She was with me when I bought my first house. She was with me when I met my current husband. And she was there. She was literally sitting on my lap when I got the news that my brother had died. And she, everything I went through my life, like she was the one I talked to. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
choked up. But she was the one I turned to first when I was going through things because I knew she would listen to me, you know?
Yeah.
And she had this, and you'll hear this from so many pet owners, she had this way of just knowing when I wasn't okay. And she would find me and she would sit with me or sit on me or like do the paw thing, put her paw on my arm just to be like, I'm here, mom, it's okay. And and when I was sick, she knew she would cry and ask my husband to put her up in the bed with me when I had the flu so she could lay with me.
The level of humanity that an animal can have it will never cease to amaze me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that level, like that comfort you're talking about. And I've experienced this with Pork Chop before. Is that she when we had COVID a couple years ago, I remember laying in bed and just unable to move and just feeling the worst I'd felt in years.
Mm-hmm.
And she hung out with me the whole time, you know.
Oh.
But I mean, but what were you saying? Like when she was there with you for all of those major moments. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and that constant source of it's almost grounding, right?
Yeah.
That
She
things
was
might be getting
my
crazy.
she was the one constant in my life, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
So when you say that you cried more for her, that doesn't sound crazy at all to me. That sounds
No.
very much like a special relationship and a
Mm-hmm.
special bond.
Yeah. Well, like I said, she was with me every single day of my life for 2 decades. And I mean, yeah, obviously I knew my brother for much longer than that, but he wasn't in my life every single day, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah. So
Well,
I never
it's
look
like
down on people who like absolutely lose it when their pet dies.
no.
Never, because I get it. Almost any pet owner would agree. They would say they get it.
I think so. I mean, because your pet, their family. You know, to me, they're family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and for us, she was. I got pork chop for my wife. I think for her birthday, right before we got married. We'd been engaged for almost a year, and it was right before we got married. We'd already decided we were going to get a cat at some point, and so I decided her birthday's coming up. Let's go and do this.
Aww.
And we've joked that she was our first fur baby. You know, she helped us prove that we could actually keep a living thing alive. And we even talk about this now. I mean, she really is a physical, living embodiment of how much we love each other, and that you know, we made this decision together, and that helped us keep moving. That helped us get to the point where now we have a human child, which is amazing. But pork chop is special to us. She always will be. Mm-hmm. So I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. They are a different type of love, for sure.
It's just, this is going to sound silly. It's almost, it's a very pure form of love to me, because it is very much it's an all-in thing. Mm-hmm. It is, I'm not going to say I get nothing from her. I'm sure you wouldn't say this either. But there's nothing like, she doesn't make me money. She doesn't provide any services around the house. It is purely companionship, and that is all I need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when she was gone, like the first 2 days were the hardest, because the house was suddenly very quiet. And she wasn't very noisy. Well, she started going deaf like her last 6 months or so. So she would meow louder because she couldn't hear herself. So she would literally scream. But she didn't do that all the time. So the house was just so quiet, though. And you know how, like, you can tell when a house is just totally empty. It just feels real still. And there was just that stillness about the house. And it just felt so much more empty than it ever had. And, you know, like, her bed was still there, and her toys were still there, and her food dish was still out. And it's just like, it just felt so quiet and empty those first couple days. Like, I'm one of those people, I couldn't stand it. I think 3 days out, I cleaned up all her stuff. I didn't get rid of it, but I packed it all away, because I'm like, I can't look at it. I can't keep looking at her bed. Can't keep looking at her food dish. So I put it all in a box down in the basement. So...
I can't blame you, because in a situation like that, I don't know, there's not a right or wrong thing there. I mean, it's really, it's whatever's going to help you in the moment, I think.
Yeah. Well, and then I got her ashes back a couple days later, and I set up a little, like we were talking before we started, I don't want to call it a shrine, but her little shrine, where her box with her ashes, her collar, and a nice little photo and a candle. Right there.
Well, yeah, it's not it would be a shrine if you were worshiping her, but it sounds to me that's a memorial. That's all that is.
Yeah, it's a place of honor. And I still remember our new cat now, when he first discovered her box of ashes. I got real nervous. He was going to knock it off. And he didn't, but he spent like 10 minutes just sniffing that box. And I was like, oh, buddy, she would have hated you. She would have hated this cat. He's young and hyper, and she didn't like that. She didn't like noise. She didn't like people in the house. If people came over, she wouldn't leave the room, but she would just sit there and glare at everybody like, why are you in my... I always said if she had a voice, if she could speak, she would sound like B. Arthur, 100%. She would have... She absolutely would have sounded like B. Arthur.
I've never thought about this before, but I just want to... I'm only going to assume that every cat sounds like B. Arthur now.
I don't know. I feel like my current cat sounds like SpongeBob. Like, it's kind of a ding, because he's kind of a ding dong. He's so sweet, but he's not very smart.
Yeah, well, we have a younger one now, Pappy, and he's okay. So I've told my wife he's the same weight as our other cat, but he doesn't look it. He looks smaller, and I told her he's dense. And I mean that in every possible sense of the word. He's dense physically, but just his head, he's dense. He's not smart. I wanted to, so you talked a little bit about how you kind of grieved in the days after, but can you talk me through the grieving process? Because I know it's not just a couple-day thing. I mean, it's like losing anyone or anything. I mean, what's the grieving process been like?
Well, like I said, I was grieving her loss long before she left, which is, we call that anticipatory grief, because I knew it was coming, but also she had so many close calls, and she was just so sick, and I knew the day was going to come. So I had a lot of grief up to that point. But the day we had her put down was such a beautiful day. I feel like I didn't grieve that day. I celebrated. So we used Lap of Love, which I don't know if you've heard of them. It's a
No.
veterinary hospice organization, and they're, as far as I know, they're national. So, but they'll come to your house. And she didn't like to leave the house ever. Like taking her to the vet was pure trauma, and I couldn't bear the thought of taking her someplace to have her put down. I wanted her to be at home, and so they came to the house, and the vet that came out was just the sweetest, most compassionate man. He was so nice. He wanted to get to know her and get to know us. He had asked all sorts of questions, and wanted to make sure we were comfortable with everything. And we went through the process, and he even said, "I'll step outside, take all the time you need." And he left us with her for a period of time so that we could cry. And I bawled, I bawled my eyes out, but I just held her and pet her. And then the hardest part was watching him leave with her, because he took her to the place to have her cremated for me. And just watching somebody take her out of my house was like, oh, my baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, the first couple days were really hard because it was just so quiet. And I was just used, it felt like half of my heart was gone, that's the only way I can think to phrase it. Like, because she was just there, and then she wasn't, and it just felt like part of me was gone. And it took time, and there was a period of time where it was honestly a little nice, not cleaning up the cat puke anymore and worrying about, is she gonna hurt herself, or we're gonna have another trip to the vet and all the vet bills and everything. Like, yeah, absolutely, that was nice not to have to worry about that. But just learning to navigate my life without her in it took some time. It really took some time.
How did the people around you, how did they respond to your grief? This is something I wonder too, because you mentioned a little bit ago that any pet owner would understand how difficult that would be, but I know not everybody's and honestly, even the word pet owner feels weird, because it's like, you don't own them, they're part of the family.
Yeah.
Pet haver,
Pet parent. Pet parent.
Pet parent.
Yeah.
I think any of them would understand, but, other people, did they know what was going on? How did other people respond?
Yeah, my Facebook feed is like that of a new mother her whole life. Like, I was constantly posting pictures of my cat. But I was always talking, because she was such a crazy cat.
Yeah.
She was full of funny stories because she was so weird. And so I was always posting pictures, and she was just so pretty, and I just talked about her incessantly. And she has her own Facebook page. I know that might be a step over,
not judging.
but I don't care.
No judgment.
She had her own Facebook page, and a lot of my friends were, friends with her too. So that everybody knew, like, she was my whole flippin' world, man. She was my everything. So when I had to tell people that, she was gone, like, the amount of support I got was amazing. Because, like I said, everybody knew she was my whole daggone world. And they were like, oh, no, Nikki's going to be a mess.
I mean, but I love, though, that so many people knew and cared about you and cared about her. I mean...
Oh, yeah. I got messages and phone calls and texts. A couple people sent me flowers, like, just for weeks and weeks and weeks after she died. People were like, are you okay?
It really is. It never ceases to amaze me. Just, you can lose all faith in humanity, and then something horrible happens, and people can step up and really restore it. And I love that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've got great friends. So everybody was very kind. I kind of kicked myself for not having a funeral, but I also know she would have hated that.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, the services after the fact are for the living.
I know.
But there is something to be said for respecting the wishes of the whoever has passed.
Yeah, absolutely. And she would have been like, nah, why are all these people in my house again?
Exactly. B. Arthur would have came out and said, no, leave.
Get out of my house.
I was gonna ask. So I know you have another cat now.
Yeah.
What was the I guess how much time passed between then and getting another cat, and was it a conscious decision of like, okay, I'm going to research, or was it just like a, hey,
No,
there's a cat available?
yeah, it's more the latter. It was a little over a year, and I was getting to the point where I wasn't sure if I wanted to get another. Like I couldn't imagine my house without a pet in it. But it
Yeah,
was kind of nice that because my husband and I like to travel a lot, and we could just leave and not have. We went on a month-long hike in Vermont, and we just like locked up the house and left. Like we didn't have to worry about somebody coming over to take care of the cat. And I was like, this is kind of nice not to have to worry about all this, but like that's 10% of my life. The other 90% I'm here, and I kept thinking about it. I would like look at cats that were up for adoption and change my mind a lot. But some friends of ours, my friend down the road, his parents live on a farm about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from here. And he said they had a cat that just showed up and was just the sweetest cat. Feral cat. They didn't know where he came from. They asked. They put it in the newspaper. They put it online. They put it everywhere to try to find this cat's owner because he was so sweet. There was no way he wasn't somebody's cat. But nobody claimed him, and they couldn't keep a cat. So they were like, "What do we do with this cat?" And my friend was like, "I know somebody." So I went up to meet the cat, and like he immediately climbed in my lap. I'm like, "Well, shit, I have a cat again."
okay. So in both cases, though, it was a matter of I see a cat with a need, and I know somebody that will give this cat a good home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
in both situations, it just kind of found you.
Yeah. 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 I guess that's kind of the secondary cat distribution system. I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the day I just find a box of kittens on the side of the road.
Well,
I
okay,
want
so
it to happen. Come on.
it'll happen when you least expect it. So
I know. I know.
Pappy, the way Pappy came into our home a little over a year ago, I was mowing the backyard, and all of a sudden, my wife got home from picking up our daughter, and they just ran into the backyard, and my daughter just screams, "We found a cat!"
Oh.
Okay, give me more details. So apparently they'd seen this little cat run out in the road, and they weren't she wasn't sure what it was, but she saw a truck run over, and she's like, "Oh, this whatever is dead."
No.
Well, the truck didn't actually hit it though. It was a bigger truck that ran right over where he was and basically rolled him just with the force of the air of the truck. I don't
Thank
know
God.
science terms. So she pulled over, she stopped, and she just ran to check on him. And she goes over there, and he's not hurt, he's not moving though. He's just terrified, and he just looks up at her. He was about 5 weeks old, and just looked at her, and she just said, "Yep, you're coming home." She grabbed him. So from the time they came to the backyard to get me, I came to the car to check on him. He had managed to crawl up underneath the dashboard of her car.
Oh no.
So we had to essentially dig him out. But our pork chop, our older cat, she's not a cat person either.
Okay.
So we had to keep them separate for several months to make sure that, one, they didn't try to kill each other, and that, two, we could get him to the vet and run all the tests to make sure that he didn't have any kind of FIV or anything going on.
Mm-hmm.
And now they bicker a little bit, but it's more of like a big sister little brother thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they've kind of progressively gotten a little bit more close. But
Aww.
you never know. You
Yeah.
never know when it's going to happen.
I'm hoping we can get a second cat, but now once again I got a cat that doesn't like other cats because when he first showed up at their farm, he was apparently pretty beat up, like his face was real torn up and
Yeah.
he was bleeding and thankfully not too badly hurt, but I think he was picked on by other cats because anytime he sees a cat outside our house, his tail's about 4 times his normal size and he kind of loses his crap for like an hour. He's chilled
Yeah.
out. We had him fixed and that helped with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And he's chilled out a little bit, but he still seems really fearful of other cats. So I don't know if this will ever work or not, but I hope so. Because he's so playful and I feel like he would love to have a little buddy.
He'd be a good cat big brother, right?
That's what I said. I keep saying if we get like a little cat, maybe. But there was one cat on our porch that he was like so scared of. He ran to me and like wanted me to hold him and he was hiding his head. This cat was like 4 pounds. I'm like, dude, And he's easily 12 pounds. Like, he's a big cat.
Yeah.
She's like,
You
buddy,
got nothing to worry about.
she's like a third your size, man. He's like, Mom, there's a cat out there. Stinker.
Oh, man. Well, so let me shift gears just a little bit more.
Yeah.
So this podcast we talk about grief and food.
Mm-hmm.
And I know most people may not associate their pets with food, but you did have a couple memories of her with food, or just things that remind you of her, right?
Absolutely. I tried not to feed her like my food often, but I did a lot. She was one of those, whatever I was eating she wanted, but 9 times out of 10 when I let her smell it, she didn't want it anymore. So
of course.
Everything I was eating, she's like, I want it, and I put it down, let her sniff it. She's like, never mind. The look on her face literally was like, no. But she loved tuna. I mean, I feel like that's a cat thing, but tuna,
Yeah.
like, if you open a can, she was like, it's tuna! And like, no, it's corn.
I respect the optimism, though.
Every can was like, tuna! So I got her tuna. That was like, especially in her last couple of years, I always had tuna in the house to give her, as a treat. But I hate tuna I cannot express to you how much I hate tuna. I wish I liked it, but it's the smell. I can't. It makes me dry heave. I can't. I hate tuna so much. But dang it, I opened a can all the time for her.
You made sure she had her treat.
I did. She loved it. My husband likes tuna, so he would eat some too. But she loved chicken too, so anytime I had chicken, I let her have some.
Do you ever do that for the new cat?
No, only because when he first came here, he was so food insecure. We're guessing he was about a year old when we brought him home. So he was on the mean streets for like a year. And so he's very food insecure. So he would attack anything we were eating and try to take it from us. So we were trying to break him of this and like get him to not try to eat our food. So we don't give him our food. Every now and then I'll accidentally drop like a piece of chicken. He'll eat anything though. He tore open a loaf of bread and ate half of the loaf.
This is Pappy.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Is he an orange tabby?
No, he's
okay.
He's a half white, half tuxedo.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. No, he very much he's same thing. I can't tell how many like chicken wings or chicken nuggets he's like absconded with.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and he knows he's not supposed to now because we yell at him. So like he'll sneak up, and I swear to God, if you turn your back for half a second, he nabs it and runs away with it. I can't tell you how many Benny Hill moments we've had of me chasing him through the house with like a piece of cheese hanging out of his mouth, and I'm like, no, you can't have it.
Well, I had to stop calling him a little bastard because my daughter repeated me one day. And
no.
I don't typically curse in front of her, but he's a little bastard sometimes, and
yeah.
I
yell at him. So yeah, we don't give him people food only because of that, because we're trying to break him of stealing food from us, and
that's fair.
But I do like he gets his wet food once a day, so he's got his special treat, and I might give him a piece of chicken here or there. That's it.
I mean, look, sometimes you get Butterfingers and a piece of chicken or a piece of ham falls.
Whoops.
I mean, it happens.
I don't know what to say.
Well, Nikki, was there anything else you wanted to tell us about Yuna, or was there anything else you wanted to talk about, like pet loss and pet grief? Because again, I think it's incredibly valid, and it's something a lot of people experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, anybody I know that has had a bond with a pet, they get it. Like, I get it, you get it. Most people have had that bond with a pet, we get it. So we understand each other. But people who don't have that bond don't, and that's okay, But I would just ask that people understand that bond can be really, really strong between a pet and their person, and a person and their pet. And like I said, I don't even like to call Yuna my pet. She was my soulmate.
Yeah.
She was my best friend. She was there with me. Like I said, I was 23, I think, when I brought her home. And no, not quite, like 24, 25. Anyway, I was in my early 20s. I was a new adult, and we kind of grew up together. We kind of started getting old together. And like, when somebody loses a pet, give them some grace, because holy crap, it's a hard one. And there have been I'm a grief professional, so I've read through the study. There have been plenty of studies on pet loss is harder on people sometimes than human loss.
Yeah. I could see that because, like you said, I mean, they're in your life every day. They are a major part of your life.
Yeah. And it's kind of stigmatized too because you're like, well, it's just a dog, it's just a cat, it's just a turtle or whatever the pet was. I'm like, no, it's so much more. People don't value the life of an animal as much as we value the lives of humans.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say everybody does that, but that's just kind of like a common thing that like, you don't think of pets as great as humans are, I guess. So that
Yeah.
the loss of a pet is like, well, that's sad, but whatever. No, not whatever.
I would slap somebody probably.
Yeah. No, thankfully, I've never heard anybody say that to me. Like, God, it's just a cat. Get it? Like, nobody has said that to me. But most of the people I associate with are amazing and awesome, so they wouldn't do that.
You don't strike me as the kind of person who'd be friends with somebody that hated cats.
Seriously, I do know people that really hate cats, and that's fine. They're allowed.
Yeah, I mean, they're allowed. I mean, you can be wrong. That's okay.
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
think it's perfectly fine to be wrong sometimes.
I, but I appreciate you sharing that and sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I always like to end with two questions. So the first one
Yes.
is, if you and Yuna could eat one more meal together, and maybe it's, maybe eating it together is not exactly the right way to put it, but if you had a chance to feed Yuna one more time, what would you want to give her?
Oh, I would give her a big old slap of tuna. Absolutely. Even though I hate it, I would still give her some tuna. And I would sit down and eat some chicken with her.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, the last thing is, tell us about what you're working on. Tell us about where we can find you and learn more about the great work you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is nikkithedeathdoula.com, and it's spelled Nikki. There's a link to my podcast on there as well. My podcast is Good Grief with Nikki the Death Doula, and I talk all about grief, much like our lovely Andrew here, destigmatizing it, demystifying it, and letting everybody know that you're not alone. Whatever you're feeling is normal. I also recently joined the board of directors for a brand new nonprofit here in Columbus, Ohio called Let the Light In. And we provide support for women who've experienced pregnancy and infant loss, which is another grief that, holy crap,
Yeah.
I think that's the worst trauma somebody could go through. But if you'd like to hear more about that, you can go to ltli.org for Let the Light In. And I actually have a interview, which should be out by the time this airs, with Cammie, who started Let the Light In, where she shares her story of her pregnancy losses and why she started Let the Light In.
Nikki, we talked a little bit before we started recording about that, and thank you so much for doing that work. I will make sure to link to your website, definitely to Let the Light In. And I would just, strongly encourage anyone to please educate yourself a little bit, learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
This is a thing I think about sometimes, whenever we talk about raising awareness for different causes, I think some people misinterpret what that means, and it's not really so much raising awareness doesn't necessarily stop something, but it is a great way to know how to help people and support people who have gone through something.
Well, and pregnancy loss is another very stigmatized grief, mostly because women don't talk about it.
Yeah.
1 in 4 women will experience a pregnancy loss in their lifetime. And like anecdotally, to me, it feels more like 1 in 3, because I swear almost every woman I have spoken to has suffered a pregnancy loss. So, yeah, it's important that we start talking about it so that these women don't feel so isolated when they go through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything to add there. I think you said it. It really, you said it perfectly. It is something that we need to be more open about and more supportive of. So thank you so much for doing that work.
Absolutely.
Nikki, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you again to Nikki for joining us today and talking about her cat. Again, pet loss is something that we go through, we experience collectively, but it's not something that we talk a lot about. So I'm glad that Nikki took the time to talk with us and share it today. If you experience this, I hope you will take the time to share and talk with somebody and treat it like the grief that it is, because animals, they can they can be more human than human sometimes. And I don't know that makes sense saying it out loud, but it makes sense in my heart. yeah, I appreciate anyone who listens. I'm happy for and excited for 2024. Hoping for another great year doing the podcast and getting to grow up more and sometimes change up the format and how I do it. If you like the show, please consider subscribing wherever you listen, be it through any podcast channels, through YouTube. You can follow at Our Last Meal Pod on all social media. You can reach out at ourlastmeal.com. You can send something to ourlastmealpod@gmail.com. If you like the show, share it with someone. If you're interested in ever being a guest, reach out to me through email, through any social media. Regardless, take care of yourselves. Make sure that you go out and have a meal with somebody that you care about.